What's your favourite time of year to go and take photos? If you ask a photographer that, a lot of us are going to give you the same answer: autumn. So let's talk about it. It's Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each and every Tuesday, we bring you a brand new, fresh photography tutorial. Now, we've covered all kinds of stuff in the past, including autumn. We talked about autumn last year. But I feel like I've learned some stuff since then. I feel like every year I want to improve and make different things and take different photos and all that kind of stuff. So we've got 2 autumn videos. This one's going to be tips on how to make the most of those autumn colors, the light, all that kind of stuff. We're going to go over, as I say, light, colors, textures, adding things to the scene, natural framing, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got a whole video all about editing autumn photos, things you can do in Lightroom and Photoshop and things like that. So anything in particular you want to see, let me know down in the comments. But otherwise, let's talk about how we can take some really lovely autumn photos, because it is a beautiful time of year to go and take photos. So first of all, let's talk about the light. Now, this is obviously key to every type of photography. Light is the #1 thing that you can use to get a better photo. And in autumn, you've got the benefit of having that kind of beautiful autumnal sunlight, which just feels a little bit softer than in the summer and stuff like that. I think it's just really beautiful. Now, I tend to avoid shooting in the midday. However, there are times when actually that midday sun can be actually really useful. Coming down through trees, through leaves, a forest, an autumnal forest, can look beautiful at that time of day because you've got the dappled light all over the floor and stuff like that. Beautiful. You get the sun rays through the trees. Oh, fantastic. So midday sun in a forest, amazing. But otherwise, I try to look to shoot around sort of sunrise or sunset to get that golden light. Now that obviously really helps with the colors that are already there in the trees, in the plants, all that kind of stuff. It really helps to have that golden sunlight, just accentuate that and bring that out. So sunrise, I'd much prefer sunset if I'm honest, just because what do I want to get up early? No, not really. So generally I'll go for sunset, it's just easier. Oh, but it's such a beautiful time to shoot. I also find that in autumn, you can actually shoot a little bit earlier as well. So like I say, I avoid the midday sun, but after about 3 p.m, at least at the moment, I find that light to be just really quite soft and beautiful. And you can get some lovely, lovely photos without having to wait until sunset and where it's kind of getting darker. You can get some really nice stuff throughout the afternoon. And that brings us on to the star of the show when it comes to autumn, which is the colors. And I think, just as important, the textures. I think capturing interesting textures is a big part of autumnal photography. Now, of course, with colors, I don't need to tell you, you go looking for the colors, you go hunting them down, you know, the orange leaves, the red leaves, contrast that with a blue sky, beautiful. You've got the leaves on the ground, so maybe you want to shoot low with the camera right down, facing up, so you've got this expansive kind of forest floor ahead of you, all these leaves. You're going to get those really crisp textures of the leaves. That can look fantastic, but also the slightly closer up bark of the trees, things like that can look so nice, especially if you've got lovely light falling on it. Those textures really help the photo, just you can almost feel it, you know? Water's always great in this sort of situation as well, because you can get those beautiful reflections. So if you've got a lovely tree line, then that can reflect in the water. Whoo! That looks fantastic. And actually, speaking of that, something I love to do at this time of year, I mean, I love it all the time, but specifically at this time of year, natural framing of something. So you find a subject, you find a composition somewhere. So maybe it's in the woods, maybe it's slightly open, maybe it's a singular tree. Now, of course, you can just snap the photo. That's gonna look fantastic. If you've set up a nice composition of a single tree in a field and it's all autumnal and orange, beautiful. But there are times when you can enhance those compositions by shooting through something. Now, we've talked about this a bunch in all kinds of different videos, but I love to do this to create a natural frame for whatever the subject is. So, for example, if you're taking a photo down a path, you might want to shoot through some leaves or some branches or something like that to create kind of this frame around the path. It can really create, first of all, a foreground element, which gives you a nice sort of out of focus foreground element, which is beautiful. Layers up the photo, you know, foreground layer, midground, background, beautiful. But it also helps kind of naturally lead the eye to the subject in the photo. So it's a beautiful way of doing that. And this is a lovely time of year for that because you've got all these different colored leaves. If you can find a natural way to shoot through some orange or red leaves. Ooh, that is gonna look really, really lovely. This works for landscape, so like I say, shooting down a path or having a subject as a tree, but also for autumnal portraits. You know, if you want to take some lovely autumnal portraits, a great way of making them feel autumnal and making it obvious like that is to use natural framing of leaves, of branches, of all kinds of things like that. And I think it's also important to vary your aperture and your focal length specifically. So for example, sticking on the subject of taking a photo of this path, so shooting down this path, different focal lengths are going to give you really, really different kind of looks and feels to that kind of photo. So obviously a longer focal length, you're going to have a bit more compression. And I think looking down a path at that kind of situation with a longer focal length and the autumnal and the naturally framed, that is going to be beautiful. I think a longer focal length is going to work really well. However, you are probably going to want to have a nice wide angle lens for some of those bigger kind of foresty, autumnal photos to capture the whole expanse of all this color and to get those leaves on the floor and all that kind of stuff. So you're gonna want to vary that up a bit. You don't want to come away from your shoot and you've just taken wide shots and you got some great stuff, but maybe there's something missing because you didn't go for that compression of a longer focal length. It can be very tempting to stick with the wide angle shots to try and get those landscape, those forests, those woods, all those trees, but sometimes you want to focus on the smaller details. And maybe you want to use even a macro lens to try and get some of the smaller leaves singled out, you know, isolated in the frame, or mushrooms growing and all those colors around that and really blur out that background. And sometimes you want to shoot at f11 and have a really deep depth of field to get everything in focus. And sometimes you want to shoot at f1.4 and you want to really focus on one thing and isolate it in the frame completely. But I think it's important, and this is something that I think is probably key to anyone getting into photography or really anyone at all. I know that I take this on board a lot, is just to take all these different varied photos, because you never know what's gonna really, really work when you get back to the computer, maybe start processing the images and you suddenly realize, oh, this one is great. You know, this one where I used a 100 to 400mm lens instead of the 24 to 70 is actually really nice. The compression works really well. And you don't want to miss out on that by just not taking the photos. And similarly to all of that, I think it's important not to be afraid to tinker in post-production. You know, when you get back to the computer, you start going through the images, you start checking different things, and you realize that some of them actually are probably going to work a lot better once they've had some processing done to them. I know recently I actually went out and took some photos. The colors weren't quite there. The leaves were turning, but the light was really good. So I just enhanced the colors a little bit with the HSL tab in Lightroom. I just brought those greens towards yellow, the yellows towards orange, and suddenly it was exactly as I imagined it would be. Now I know that's not to everyone's taste. A lot of photographers like to kind of take the photo, really get it as perfect as they can, and then not really edit it at all. Maybe not at all. Maybe shoot in JPEG. But personally for me, I like the editing process. I feel like I can make things look the way I saw them, or the way I felt that they probably could look when I was setting up the composition and stuff like that, bringing out those colors, just shaping the light a little bit, and just having a little bit of a tinker. Obviously you can go way too far and things can look crazy, but I think just having a little bit of a play in Lightroom, Photoshop, stuff like that, can really bring out the best, especially at this time of year, when nature might just need a little helping hand with those colors and that light. Now, if you have any tips of your own, absolutely pop them down in the comments. I'd love to know some of the spots as well that you love for autumn photos. I think it can be so tricky to find awesome spots because by the time you notice the colors changing and stuff like that, you've not got very long and you've got to get out there before all the leaves go, and it's a pretty intense time, you know. Sometimes I'll scan a place in summer and think that place is going to be great in autumn, and I go back and it's not, and it's absolutely not. It's rubbish. Or sometimes the opposite happens and I think that place is going to be good, and then it's just amazing when it comes to autumn. But you know, you've got to play it carefully with the clouds, with the light, with the colors when they change, all that kind of stuff. You've got to keep an eye out. So any tips you have as well to add to our ones, absolutely pop them down in the comments. I'd love to hear all about them. Any spots as well that you find particularly awesome for autumn colors, that'd be lovely to hear. I love hearing about all that kind of stuff. Any questions about the kit used or any of the points, pop it all down there as well. Whew, that's a lot. That's a lot to put down in the comments, but I believe I believe that we can do it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video as well. I will, of course, see you in the next video. And, as always, thanks for watching.